march to the sound of thunder. Taurian banners raised high asunder. Steel on steel, you hear the echoes roar. Good times rhymes with war crimes evermore. Get off our lawn, starling scum, we stand as one. You'd better run, paws of fury, hearts ablaze. War pugs thunder through the haze. From dusty plains to the jagged peaks, we guard our home through fire and sleet. No concordant will kneel or bow. Our cause is just, our time is now. Get off our lawn, starling scum, we stand as one. You'd better run, paws of fury, hearts ablaze. War pugs thunder through the haze. We're snarling thunder, relentless charge. Our anthem shakes the void at large. Bulldogs of justice, sharp and bold. Our legacies forged in myths untold. We howl for freedom, we wage for peace. Our battle cries will never cease. The war pugs rise, unstoppable tide. Together we conquer, side by side. Get off our lawn, starling scum, we stand as one. You'd better run, paws of fury, hearts ablaze. War pugs thunder through the haze. Woo! From the haze.
I met a little fella by the name of Warpug from the Free World League. Loud and very ugly, living his best pug life. Had him dreaming of being a Mech warrior pilot, sitting on his grandma's lap and he's fighting composed. The boy was shy away from nothing. That's a jag. Warpug pointed at it. I don't think it's a cat. I think this person might be my dad. That's a battle master. Oh no, excuse me, my hand slipped. I destroyed it by accident. Warpug destroyed me again. Warpug destroyed another lance. Like he said he would know, he didn't even apologize. Warpug did it to you. Oh, you little warpug, not like the kindest guy. Unsportsmanlike, shoot your legs and warpug die. An eye for an eye, a man 5'9" and a hateful rise. Shooting DK players like they shot Cujo. Little pug dog with a burgundy coat. Warpug destroyed me again. Warpug destroyed me again. Warpug did it to you. Warpug destroyed another lance. Like he said he would, and then laughed in your face at the beginning. Warpug did it to you, and laughed in your face again.
Warbugs!
Like he said he would, and then laughed in your face at the beginning. Or put it into you, and laughed in your face again. Like he said he would, and then laughed in your face at the beginning. Or put it into you, and laughed in your face again.
Warbugs, what's up? How's everybody doing? Is everybody having a good day? It's Battletech Tuesday, and we are back, baby. Guys, it has been a little bit since I've been able to do one of these. It's been a bit since I've been able to sit down. It has been a little bit. We're here for Stompy Robots, my guys. We're here for Stompy Robots. And if you're watching the news, yes, stupidity did happen in Europe today. And I don't know what's going to happen now. Stupidity has happened in Europe. Oh boy. Oh boy. We will find out. We will find out. Warpugs. Yeah, Department of Defense is now a Department of War. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. But today we are stompy robots time, guys. And stompy robots are fun. And PancreasNoWork has stepped foot into the arena. And we're going to be checking them out. Guys, this is all the flavors of overkill, okay? All the flavors of overkill. Warpugs, if you want to know what I'm talking about, go to Twitter, type in Poland. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Warpugs, I really, really am happy to be on this live stream again. I really, really am. The last couple of weeks were just... They were the level of suck was incredible. But let's get right into it, Warpugs. For the Torian Concordant, for the Steiner Scout Squadron, glory to Merrick, Karita can suck it. No, I didn't see the activist that blew up her own boat. I did not. I did not. Let's get into it, Warpugs. PancreasNoWorks explaining all the flavors of overkill. Let's go.
Those of us whose brain only gets as far as going bigger is better, we know that different levels of scale require different levels of force.
True.
A proportionate response is a good thing to aim for, because sending the Death Star in to deal with a single rebel corvette certainly sends a message, but there's probably more pressing issues you could be using it to deal with.
True.
The Imperial Guard of 40k sending 50 Baneblades on a scouting mission will certainly ensure that scouting party comes back alive, and the enemy doesn't go back home alive for that matter.
True.
But they'd probably best be spent on an actual critical battlefield, instead of looking for enemy troop movements to obliterate. Conversely, a small scouting force of a couple soldiers is not what you send to deal with an enemy invasion force on your most critical of planets.
No.
Yes, I'm sure your high school history teacher has regaled you with tales of why the Maginot Line was worthless, but sometimes a big, barely if at all mobile wall of guns is what you need for one reason or another.
This is verily accurate. Mate, thanks, bud. Boss, prepare for the funny this Friday. Also expect to be educated more on furry culture. It's not as threatening as it sounds. Are there cat girls? Protogens and Avalai and 40k would be neat. What do you... Are there cat girls? That's the only question.
If nothing else, Germany had to go around the Maginot Line, if you recall.
Yes.
And so we come to today's topic, the different scales of mech you can find in the Battletech universe.
Thank you, mate.
With what for a mech is blindingly fast speed, capable of maneuvering with the same speed and agility as even things like helicopters. Others may be about as fast as a fortress, but pack the firepower and armor to match. And of course, everything between those two extremes can be found as well. So sit back, relax, and listen as I ramble on about the different sizes and uses of fictional mech warfare, because even history nerds like big awesome things that go boom. But before I talk about fake technology, would you like to hear about where you can learn about real-world technology?
Oh?
Because I've got just the place to do so. Brilliant, the sponsor of this video. Brilliant is the place to go to learn math, science, programming, and so much more.
Yes!
It's the most effective way to learn, because it isn't just yammering at you a whole bunch of knowledge you didn't repeat back for a test and then forget about. You're doing hands-on lessons where you play with the concepts and build upon them for each lesson. You aren't locked in a classroom for hours on end. You can choose to use Brilliant as much or as little as you want to, and have the time to spare, so you don't need to worry about tiring out and not paying attention.
There you
If
go.
Find your focus slipping, then don't worry. Brilliant and its expertly crafted lessons will be waiting for you whenever you're ready. But it doesn't just teach you knowledge, it teaches you problem-solving skills too. Because Brilliant is so hands-on with his lessons and has you work on scenarios and problems throughout the courses, you learn how to solve problems across the board, not just the
Touche, SRX.
singular one in front of you. If all this sounds appealing, and I certainly hope it does, then I've got just the thing for you. Go to https://brilliant.org/PancreasNoWork to grab yourself 20% off an annual premium subscription, giving you access to everything Brilliant has to offer. That's https://brilliant.org/PancreasNoWork/ for
Christian.
20% off an annual premium subscription. It's never too late to learn, so try Brilliant today and make yourself all the smarter for it.
Hooray.
Now then, let's see what best suits your taste, Mech Warrior. Well, there are 4 main classes of mech size to go by when choosing how best you'd like to commit war crimes in the Inner Sphere. It's worth noting that not only are there a few outlying ways to classify mechs, but also that these are only a rough guideline of what to expect. While most
Stop talking to me about 40k, Kenneth. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be angry today. I don't want to be angry with what they've done. They have seriously pissed me off.
light mechs aren't going to be rocking truly heavy firepower, I can assure you that you will learn to appreciate the word most in that sentence when you turn a city corner to be met with an urban mech armed with an AC-20 and a need to prove itself.
Yeah.
You will also appreciate the clean underwear you were wearing immediately prior to that encounter. In the same manner, most assault mechs are going to be slow, cumbersome things with enough firepower to level that same city corner before poor Irby gets their chance.
Right.
Then you meet someone piloting a charger who misplaced all their actual impressive weaponry on a better designed mech. In that case, roll a d8. On a 2 through 8, you can laugh at the moron piloting the assault mech designed for scouting purposes. On a 1, you feel a very unique kind of terror when said charger sprints at you at speeds rivaling a locust with an axe in hand and a lust for human blood.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, let's get into the classifications.
Let's go.
Starting, of course, from the bottom, we begin with
Ultralight mechs.
the least substantial of all mech categories in more ways than one. In fact, if we're going to be splitting hairs about things, the Draconis Combine's military doesn't even consider this to be a valid classification of battle mech.
Okay.
For them, a true battle mech needs to be at least 20 tons. Depending on who the coordinator is at the time, suggesting the Dragon deploy those mechs to the field will either get you laughed at or handed a katana and told to handle your execution yourself. These mechs technically in this weight class aren't even true battle mechs, but industrial mechs, essentially glorified forklifts. Presumably, the industrial mech license is even more vaunted than a forklift license, but I still wouldn't want to take one into the field of battle. Nevertheless, there are still occasional uses for ultralight mechs. The Inner Sphere having the history it does, sometimes there isn't the money, parts, or really anything to afford a proper battle mech.
This is very true. This is obscenely true. Especially after the Second War.
After the 5th time one of the great houses bombs your planet into the Stone Age, you may find yourself completely out of options. In
Right.
those cases, a crap mech is still better than no mech.
True.
Aside from that, even something like this can still find uses outside of outright warfare. The Guardian Light Mech, for example, was something built as a proper battle mech, but largely served as a security mech, because sending a whole-ass mech in to quell a riot is certainly an effective way to do so.
Yeah, very
The Solari,
true.
Meanwhile, was a mech, yes, but a drone mech designed by Comstar. In spite of looking more like Soundwave's pet than a proper mech, it was still something produced by the powers that be and designated as a mech, so who are we to disagree on that front? As you might have noticed between those two, a lot of ultralight mechs are a bit weirder in design.
Yes.
This is the weight class where the concept that most people think of as a mech gets stretched, and more out there ideas are played with.
Christian, thank you, bud. For the end of the video, post-clan invasion got into the wacky world of super heavies, and that was too much for me. Battletech did rule of cool relatively sparingly until post-clans.
Bringing one of these to
Thank
all
you,
but the most
Christian.
either urgent of battles or the
Yeah. I know. I did a video with PancreasNoWork a while back, and I much appreciate him doing that. He didn't have to do that. He was actually pretty awesome about doing that.
most low stakes of scouting missions wouldn't be what I recommend, but for the merc on a budget or a planetary leader who needs all the help they can get, you can certainly do worse. Let's move on to the actual mechs now, though, shall we?
Let's
I can
go.
Feel the Steiner Noble in me shivering with disgust as I hang around this weight class.
Light mechs.
This is the point where no one will debate you on whether or not you have a battle mech. They may say you have a piddly little battle mech, but you have at least owned a battle mech now.
True.
Light mechs tend to be the kind of things that true gamers with the mind of cavemen like myself tend to ignore. After all, the bigger the mech, the more gunnier it can be, and I'm about as intelligent as an ape, so I like that idea. But that
Yay!
isn't the role of a light mech, to be running in and gunning down everything they see in a blaze of glory. Light mechs, by and large, are the logical conclusion of the phrase reconnaissance and force. Even at this level, a battle mech is a more efficient fighting vehicle than pretty much anything else in the setting, short of aerospace fighters or entire groupings of tanks. The latter are expensive and can't really hope to stand up to any meaningful mech presence, and the former are usually best deployed to other theaters of engagement. For one reason or another, those methods of warfare aren't optimal most of the time. So we send in the light mechs. Depending on the mech in question, a light mech can achieve speeds of up to almost 130 kilometers an hour in the case of the Locust. For those of you who speak real measurement units, that's a crisp 80 miles an hour, which is highway speed. Light mech is one of the fastest things you're likely to see in Battletech, and for scouting purposes, they're completely unmatched. They can be in and out before some of the heavier mechs an enemy might have are even ready to go, and whether that be to just take notes on the enemy or give them a murdery little surprise, they're great for it. When it comes time to fight, they're the ultimate harassers around. Ultralight mechs aren't exactly putting out solid levels of firepower, but normal light mechs can reliably at least distract the enemy and force them to pay attention. And at least for the Mech Warrior games, I can speak of this being not only an effective, but an infuriating tactic. A light mech can run circles around a heavier one without any difficulty, and now you have to make a choice. Follow me on this, please. The biggest weakness of a light mech is that their armor is pretty pathetic. Their weapons aren't great either, but anything can put the hurt on after enough time.
This was one of my favorite things to do in Mech Warrior Online, was to get on a light mech with a whole bunch of machine guns and literally go in there and crit stroke somebody to death. Like, I'm sorry, I am now behind you. You no longer have legs.
So while it won't do much good to someone in an assault mech, it will add up eventually. If you hit them with one good shot, there's odds they might go down, but if you keep missing light mechs like a moron, you'll be wasting time and ammo while a more substantial threat lays into you. If you ignore them, though, then they'll be focusing fire on you, constantly wearing you down. Their weapons on their own might not do too much, but in tandem with other heavier mechs, even a Locust can be a threat that punches well above its weight class. That assumes you're a decent pilot, of course. If you aren't, you're gonna get beat up real bad in a light mech. The pilot of one has to have steady aim on the same body part of an enemy mech to hope to take them down. The bozo in a Highlander, meanwhile, has to hit you once and you're dead. Or accidentally step on them once, because a Highlander is a flying house, and a commando is going to be staring up at it like that one meme of Willem Dafoe. Still, though, they are a valued asset in certain circumstances. Aside from that, though, their other major focuses are various backline uses and desperation. A light mech makes a great guard. It's a mech, so it's a substantial show of force that'll dissuade anyone but dedicated attackers. On the other hand, though, it's a cheap and, all things considered, fairly insubstantial mech. It's a far more cost-effective thing to throw one of these in your backline than to have a battlemaster stationed miles away from the fight with its thumb up its ass. Sure, if it gets jumped by a solid force, it'll be blown away, but hopefully it can either survive long enough for reinforcements or to just run away and alert said reinforcements that they're needed. As for desperation, the inner sphere gives off a low but noticeable amount of background radiation at all times for how
desperation? Yes, I sense it.
How often the great houses have nuked each other.
True.
These colors on this map are a variety of different people who all dislike everyone around them, and that's before the clanners showed up. With how destructive the secession wars were, sometimes anything above a light mech just wasn't really an option for all but the most dire of scenarios. When your choices are no mech or light mechs, you take the light mech. Especially since with the destruction of most factories and proper research in the inner sphere for centuries, light mechs were just about the only thing that could be reliably repaired wherever you went. Periphery states as well.
Christian, thank you, bud. To explain Highlander slander, it has jump jets and the Blackwatch did a death from above bearing lights called a Highland burial. I know, Christian, it's one of my favorite animations, period. There is nothing quite like a flying assault mech that will land and legitimately turn you from an existence to a scrap metal existence in seconds.
We've always been a bit
it's amazing
in the inner sphere when it comes to raw resource and production capabilities. If you're the Draconis Combine, they also have another key feature. Since they're so cheap, you can drown your enemies in hundreds of them at once, and what they pretend is military strategy and not gross negligence at best. If you die, then you die wasting the enemy's ammo and hopefully take one guy with you. If you live, maybe you can pilot a big boy mech one day.
Yay!
Thank you, House Kurita. Very honorable. Some of the more prominent light mechs would be the aforementioned Locust and Urban Mech, as well as the Commando, if you don't mind me praising Lyran ingenuity for a bit. Commandos are mechs that to me especially look like people, and were actually one of the earliest ones designed. While the Lyrans do tend to prefer their big stompy assault mechs, the Commando will at least receive some grudging respect and patriotism for how effective it is.
Okay.
In fact, it was the Lyran's premier mech during the first large-scale deployment of mechs in Battletech, against the Draconis Combine, of course, performing spectacularly against the higher tonnage mechs the Combine deployed. The standard loadout of this thing makes it
This fact that you can say that the Steiners perform spectacularly at anything militarily is kind of an oxymoron in and of itself.
understandable why it's good. With a top speed of 97 kilometers an hour, a medium laser, an SRM-6, and an SRM-4, it's surprisingly punchy compared to what other light mechs can bring to the table.
True.
At least I think it is, but I'm biased, because SRMs are missile shotguns as far as I'm concerned, and that's the coolest phrase ever. The Lyrans loved it so much that they did everything they could to keep it from ever entering the hands of other factions, which aside from the occasional ones salvaged by someone else, they managed to do for several hundred years. The Locust, meanwhile, is a little asshole of a mech that I can't decide if I love or hate. As mentioned earlier, it tops out at 129 kilometers an hour. It's armed with a medium laser, 2 machine guns, and if you squint real hard, it almost looks like it has armor. A love tap from heavy artillery will send this thing packing, but as a scout, it's unrivaled. The only thing that might be quicker are mechs with jump jets, and even then this thing is so fast that it'll still outpace them as often as not, especially on even terrain. People tend to not be the biggest fans of piloting this mech because any amount of fire is too much for it, but in the hands of a skilled scout, these things are annoying as hell.
Not only are they annoying as hell, they're my favorite fucking target.
Profile is fairly small as mechs go, so hitting it can be difficult, especially if they're moving at full speed.
They go
And while they're
crunch.
still probably not winning anything in a stand-up fight, they make the ultimate harasser to assist bigger mechs. Plus, sometimes Locusts will gang up on you, which can be
like chicken
surprisingly
walkers.
difficult to handle. You'll probably gun one down, but the various machine guns pouring into you can whittle you down for the others to destroy you. If nothing else, I imagine trying to focus on one Locust and a swarm of them will give you some sensory overload as you frustratedly try and get a bead on one, only for the others to shoot you in the back and try and trip your mech. Towards the end of the clan invasion and the Second Star League, these things finally stop seeing wide-scale production in the inner sphere, but there's so many of them made and the periphery still continues to make them that it doesn't matter. Until the heat death of the Battletech universe, you will still find someone piloting a Locust, either through sheer determination or desperation.
Crackhead determination
The
counts.
Urban Mech, God's mightiest trash can and the unofficial mascot of this franchise. It's as slow and as assault mech with only the armament of a light mech, and outside of city combat, getting into one of these things is a complete death trap. That's the beauty of the Urban Mech, my friend. It is designed solely for urban combat. It is not meant to be walking across fields engaging other mechs head to head, though of course this sometimes has to happen. It is designed to be able to march through inner city streets like nothing else. As only a light mech, it's small enough that it can reliably use even the buildings and smaller cities as cover. It can have enough armor on it to be able to sustain as much fire as at least medium mechs. It has jump jets, which gives it a surprising amount of mobility, if not speed. And for some brave pilots who want to forego a bit of the armor, you can in theory mount an AC-20 on this thing. You don't have much armor, you won't have much ammo, but you do have an AC-20.
This is
You are
true.
using this thing in a defensive position and have the balls to do that, you can wait around a corner, jump scare someone with the Battletech equivalent of a Kamehameha, and then waddle back to resupply and do it again. In all other circumstances, this thing is utter dog shit, but it's such a scrappy little thing that everyone just loves it. The Capellans in-universe especially love this thing, because they're solidly in 5th place amongst the 5 major factions of the Inner Sphere, and this thing is dirt cheap to flood the battlefield with.
Yay!
Godspeed, little Irby. You are the greatest of us all.
Yes, you are.
If you're a military commander, these are the workhorses of your army. Better armed and armored than lighter mechs, faster than heavier mechs, they can be slotted into any role in a pinch. If you're a person playing Battletech, this is the boring middle ground for people who always pick the default fighting game character with no major up or downsides. And
Okay.
if you're like me and always pick the default fighting game character with no major up or downsides, we're back to them being perfect. As you go higher in the weight classes of mechs and Battletech, the amount of them tends to drop off, because as I said earlier, the succession wars tore the Inner Sphere apart, and producing new things became quite difficult for a while.
Right.
But medium mechs are still able to be found aplenty on the fields of battle. Ranging from 40 to 55 tons, they aren't so resource intensive that replacing them is truly difficult. It may, depending on which point in time you're looking at, become a bit hard to find certain weapons for a given medium mech, especially if you decided to grab one with a bunch of railguns or something bolted to it because you are insane. But rearmoring one and finding replacements for things like engines is no challenge at all for any self-respecting mercenary company, let alone one of the great houses.
I mean, just go in blasting. You'll be fine. Just go in blasting.
And as much as I was a bit dismissive calling them the generic fighting game character of mechs, I meant that more as a general statement for the entire category.
Works.
Amongst medium mechs, you can find essentially any kind of way to wage warfare and have it be effective. Do you want the Ryu from Streets of medium mechs? A Centurion is a lovely piece of machinery that doesn't really excel at anything, but can do most everything, and has enough armor to be able to fill any role you need, at least as a supporter. Do you want lasers? The Crab has lasers, and it has the added benefit of being further proof that everything becomes a crab sooner or later. Many of them out there because Comstar has a bit of a hoarding problem, but if you like lasers and can find one, it's a fine thing. Do you want a medium mech but still want people to know they don't make as much money as you? Can't go wrong with a Griffin, especially because the Archon of the Lyran Commonwealth has 2 of the damn things in their throne room. Even amongst what's been said, those are largely the standard loadouts. If you like to mix and match and get creative, just about any medium mech can do anything, though at a certain point you may be better off acknowledging the sunk cost fallacy and getting a different medium mech. Their tonnage is in the magical range where you have enough space and weight to spare that if you want to fit everything, you can. But if you want to focus on one thing and make something like a 55-ton mech with no armor and enough firepower to obliterate anything in its way without hesitation, you can also do that. Medium mechs overall are the Ryu of Battletech. Looking at any given one in particular, it's a complete gamble as to what you'll actually find. That's why commanders tend to make such use of them. Because of them still being fairly reliable to make after all the shit the Battletech universe has gone through, and them being generally able to fill any position, they're perfect for any scenario. This is about the heaviest thing you're likely to find out in the periphery of Battletech as a side note. Without the massive industrial bases of the Inner Sphere or the several hundred-year build-up time of the clans, regularly using assault or even heavy mechs is a lot harder out there. Saying anything definitively is asking for trouble, and I'm sure at least the Tarians have plenty of scary things hidden away, but by and large I feel comfortable saying medium is on average where a given periphery world will be topping out at. Some medium mechs I'm personally fond of are the Blackjack and the Centurion.
Get bent, fucko.
The Blackjack is something that had a very unfortunate reputation.
Right.
But during the Star League era, the Blackjack early on got a reputation for being an utter piece of shit. Many of the earliest people who used it said it had a tendency to fall over because its legs and feet were poorly designed, and the armor was supposedly so brittle that it could just fall right off the mech. General Motors, and yes, in Battletech it is that General Motors,
that General Motors,
had no response to the bad press, because by all accounts of their own, it was a perfectly fine mech.
And they also have no response to me asking where the fuck the fusion reactors are.
True, it was built for dealing with insurgents and wasn't the most powerful thing on the battlefield, but in that role it should have been fine. When the Succession Wars began and the factory making these things was destroyed, no one was all that unhappy about it, though. From there, the majority of these things fell in either Capellan or Federated Sun hands, and the reputation of it was so shit that even the Capellans weren't happy about using it. Some up-and-coming Fed Sun engineers, however, wanted to see if it was really that bad, and to their presumably utter shock, it wasn't. It was perfectly fine, and even at a certain point was used by the Fed Suns to push back a Draconis Combine assault with great results. Whether through early flaws from production rather than actual design flaws, or some idiots blaming their mech when they crashed it into a building, this thing's poor reputation seems to be entirely conjured out of thin air. That interesting backstory is part of why I like it, but I mostly like it because you can be a tremendous asshole with it. Its standard armament is 2 AC-2s and 4 medium lasers. It can run at a decent enough speed of 64 kilometers an hour, and at barely over 3 million C-bills, this thing is damn cheap. Now, medium lasers are fine, but AC-2s are the worst autocannon you can get as far as damage goes. Thing is, though, they can shoot far. Real damn far. So what you do is grab yourself a Blackjack, and while the mechs more focused on close combat are doing their thing, you can sit back 20 miles from the battlefield and plink away at some unobservant moron piloting his precious assault mech. It's just a really funny thing you can do with the Blackjack. And if a lighter mech tries to get up close to you, 4 medium lasers to the face can show that you certainly aren't defenseless. How helpful you'll actually be is up for debate, and of course your accuracy, but I love the idea of someone confidently strutting up the battlefield only to be constantly pelted with rocks from across the planet for the entire fight. This
That's what it felt like playing Paladin of Blackjack. I'm not even gonna kid.
Centurion, meanwhile, is just me being boring. Aside from the Black Pants Legion and Big Red 40k tech, Mech Warrior 5 is what got me into Battletech. And in the campaign start, you get yourself a Centurion to pilot.
Right.
Like I said earlier, it isn't particularly good at anything, but it's faster than heavier mechs, better armed and armored than lighter mechs, and it's just a comfortable thing to pilot. If you don't have any bigger mechs, you can charge ahead in it as the focal point of your lance, but if you're confident in your accuracy, you can also fire away at the enemy while the bigger mechs take the heat. With an LRM-10 and AC-10, a Centurion is at least a noteworthy enemy at all ranges. It's nothing that would make a given commander blow their load, but also nothing a given commander is going to be upset to find as part of their arsenal. It's just all reliable. And for a man who is pathologically incapable of playing anything but the all-rounder factions and strategy games on a regular basis, it's got a soft spot in my heart for that. Also,
The all-rounder? No.
but the Hunchback. All I feel I need to say about this thing is that I was playing Mech Warrior 5 the other day, turned a corner, and a Hunchback I didn't know about was sitting on the other side of it, staring at me. The HUD told me it had an AC-20 on it, and then if nothing else, I can thank it for ensuring my bowel movements stayed regular. This is where the big boys start to swing their money dicks around.
Yeah.
The heavy mech is in the 60 to 75 ton range, and while they can be plenty varied, this is where things start to get a bit more streamlined. These things are designed for frontline combat, not necessarily to be at the very center of attention, but at least to be contributing to the focal point of the battle. As always, only a clanner deals in absolutes, but it tends to be the case that heavy mechs are supposed to be slugging it out. This doesn't mean that the weapons they can carry are limited, of course. Over the span of human history, we've come up with a variety of very creative ways to murder each other, and heavy mechs are in some ways the culmination of that. You can find heavy mechs that are faster than the others and built for getting in and out. They will likely not be great at sustained fighting as heavy mechs are supposed to be, but they can still certainly sustain heavier firepower than all but the most specialized of medium mechs. A dedicated missile boat heavy mech is going to be making the Persians of 300 proud, because instead of arrows blocking out the sun, it's explosives. This is the category where things start getting pretty rare, however. It varies from great house to great house, but constant usage of heavy mechs on the battlefield isn't something most people can afford to do, at least not without them being utilized to the fullest extent. Unless you're Space Germany or a mercenary commander with a disturbingly high bank balance, losing
Space Germany equals Steiner.
too many of these things is going to set the economy back a bit. Their higher production cost and natural firepower meant that heavy mech factories were already relatively few in number, and no doubt high priority targets when the Inner Sphere began playing dodgeball with nuclear weapons. If you want these things, you best take care of them. They're also fairly slow, so I hope you didn't plan on them coming out unscathed because their pilot was cosplaying as Neo from The Matrix. Or Neo from Ruby, if you don't mind me reminding you of Ruby's existence. This is also at least where I would say things start to become a bit rock, paper, scissory if you want a specialized mech. For
Okay.
example, take the catapults. With 2 RLM-15s and 4 medium lasers, this thing is going to rain down hell from across the battlefield in a way the Blackjack can only dream of. But it has no arms, and those 4 medium lasers on it won't do it much good if something of equal weight class gets close. 4 medium lasers on a medium mech is good. That's some nice firepower. 4 medium lasers on a heavy mech, not so good. You get a C on your assignment. Specialization isn't bad, though, it should be said. With properly kitted loadouts, a heavy mech can be unstoppable in its given area of
Fox Leader, is it basically telling you that is the AI summary telling you this is music? Because it's not going to surprise me if it really does. It's really not going to surprise you. Amazing. Sweet. Great. We're not sitting here talking about big stompy robots. Glorious.
expertise, because you have room to fit in anything you want to make a given idea work. It more than likely has enough armor to survive anything that tries to step up to it, long enough for a blundering pilot to pull their head out of their ass and start fighting properly, because 75 tons of mech is a whole lot of mech for anything smaller than it to chew through. If you want one thing done exceptionally well, or you aren't the best of pilots but have plenty of money to spare, a heavy mech is the category of choice. And while they probably aren't being utilized best as defensive forces, it has to be said that so pilots piloting a Locust is probably going to be very afraid when they realize their opponent is committing something as powerful as these things to garrison duty. Picture something like 40k or Halo, right? If you scout out a base and find it entirely crewed by Space Marines or Spartans, then congratulations, you found the most fortified planet in the galaxy.
Yeah.
If you're found out, you are going to die. For my two heavy mechs of choice, I'd personally recommend the Archer and the Black Knight. The Archer is actually more well-armed than the Catapult in spite of the name, though it came first, so I have to assume that the creators of the Catapult were trying to overcompensate with the name, or make it sound better.
Yes.
Weighing in at 70 tons and with the same 4 medium lasers as the Catapult, it ups the ante by bringing forth 2 LRM-20s instead of 15s. Its job on the battlefield is very simple and true to the name. Rain down missile fire on the opponent until it's either out of ammunition or everyone in the line of fire is dead. Well over 100,000 of these things were produced before the Secession Wars even began, and they were of such high quality that the design has remained a feature on battlefields throughout. The factories making them were even able to make it through the conflicts fairly unscathed, presumably because these things are so kick-ass that no one wanted them completely gone. Of course they got rarer, but it was never a true shock to see someone commit an Archer to the field of battle. It's like the M1911 of battle mechs, because after humanity in Battletech dies out and is replaced by mole people or something, they will still likely be using Archers when it's time to throw down.
Okay.
Black Knight, meanwhile, is a clan buster, and so I have to hold it in high regard. Weighing in at 75 tons is at the higher end of heavy mechs, and much like the Archer, it too is highly specialized. By default, these bad boys come equipped with a PPC, 2 large lasers, 4 medium lasers, and a small laser thrown in as a fun little bonus.
Yay!
No doubt.
Prophet, hey boss, got the dog shit smoked out of me yesterday. You were late to an hour late to formation? Your alarm didn't wake you up? Bro, that sucks. That really sucks. That is the shit right there, my guy.
Guest, Black Knights are for
Thank
those
you,
of
Prophet.
who really like lasers. But the fun doesn't stop there, my
Pew-pew.
good people. Because if you don't mind switching a few things around or ending up a bit over tonnage,
Yeah, emotional
this thing
support,
can
small
also
laser.
carry a sword. Normally something with this many lasers would be at extreme risk of overheating, but the designers had a simple solution to that
wow,
problem, too.
Buck.
20 heat sinks. As long as you remember to take your finger off the trigger every now and again, a Black Knight can reasonably deal with its overheating problems. And if you're still worried about overheating, you may damn well have a sword. Swing it at something bothering you, because if the light mechs annoying you get a bit too cocky, you have several thousand pounds of pointy metal to respond with.
Hooray. Steven, so basically, there was a lot of radar returns coming from Russia into Poland. We're not too sure what happened yet. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out soon. But, yeah. At this point, Russia's just doing something stupid. Russia's doing something really stupid, and they need to stop.
Does stand in sharp contrast to the Archer in terms of availability, however. Never produced in the same numbers to begin with, the factory where these things were made was obliterated during the early days of the Secession Wars. The company behind it was eventually able to restart production, but the most complicated
Yeah,
and advanced
Russia is tasting the
bots weren't
FAFO
able
scale.
to be remade, and so what was once top-of-the-line engineering had to be replaced with substandard parts. Eventually, after the production line was destroyed again, thank you Capellans, they stopped making new models and instead focused entirely on doing what they could to somewhat maintain what already existed. Early on, the Great Houses threw plenty of them at whoever they were fighting with at the time, but as time went on, they became a rarer and rarer sight until the only remaining stockpile of them worth mentioning was Comstars. When the clans invaded, however, the Black Knights were judged as worthy mechs to stand up to their onslaught, and they performed well, because phone companies can be a terrifyingly powerful force if no one is there to tell them to calm down.
Right.
Production was eventually resumed, and these are still the first mech I think of when it comes to Tukayen and the clanners being told to sit down and behave. There comes a time when a proportionate response is not what you need.
No!
Sometimes a measured, analytic, strategically efficient course of action just doesn't suffice. Maybe a given planet or fortress simply cannot fall. Maybe you need to send a message to someone and need to speak very loudly for them to hear it. Or maybe you just have more money than you know what to do with and you like big explosions.
Yep.
In these cases, you can do no finer than an assault mech. Assault mechs are those wonderful pieces of machinery weighing in from 80 to 100 entire tons. They are the rarest thing on the battlefield, unless you are the protagonist of a Battletech story, in which case you have one, your rival has one, and the guy down the street has one to loan you so you can destroy your rivals after he destroys your original one. At millions, if not tens of millions of C-bills, they are expensive. With how much time and resources need to be poured into them, they were fairly rare even before the Succession Wars began in force. After that, they were damn near unheard of during the worst years of the fighting. But when they did show up, it was a sign that the powers that be had all their attention on your battlefield. Assault mechs in universe had been part of mech combat from the very beginning. The Mackie, the first true battle mech, weighed in at 100 tons, and while it was the first mech and as such has since been surpassed, was still a horrifically deadly thing to face. Ever since then, century after century of development, trial and error, and desperate people cobbling together whatever they could have turned assault mechs into the most feared things in Battletech. Some downsides first, because you can't end on a low note when talking about assault mechs. These things are horrifically slow. They're essentially walking fortresses, and that amount of kick-ass comes at the cost of them being lumbering beasts that take forever to get where they need to go. Missing a shot on one of these things is either catastrophically unlucky or a sign that being a mech warrior wasn't the career path for you, because you cannot miss 100 tons of steel if you're actually trying. They're unbelievably expensive, hindering the ability for almost everyone to use them in all but the most dire of circumstances. Depending on the assault mech in question, you could probably afford 4 light mechs, an entire lance for the same price. Potentially more, depending on how well equipped they are and what mech you're getting. Maintaining them is also, of course, expensive, and even fairly early into the Succession Wars, these things' exorbitant costs meant that they were quickly becoming rare creatures. Even if you can make an assault mech with the most brain-dead simple systems and components possible, they need a lot of them. And when
we joke about the Steiner Scout Squadron, but my god, that would be an expensive fucking squadron.
told you can either have several lighter mechs or one barely repaired assault mech, it's understandable that most people are going to choose the former as time and conflict wears on. But when deployed, all of that fades away. They're so absurdly heavy, armed, and armored that it doesn't matter they're impossible to miss. It doesn't matter they're slow. It doesn't matter that they're expensive. Because in that moment, you are the person with the biggest stick on the battlefield.
Yay.
Wading through firepower that would shred anyone else isn't just possible, it's their modus operandi. Only concentrated barrages or another assault mech can stop you. Locust or other light mechs swarming you stops mattering here, because when you can accidentally step on one and not notice it, you have reached the point of being too big to fail. Even a mech as god-awful in concept as the Charger, a light mech trapped in an assault mech's frame, can be unstoppable, because at the end of the day, it is an assault mech and can at the very least wade through enough firepower to rend you into human gravy when it gets close.
There you go.
Incidentally, the Charger is about the only assault mech you'll reliably find in the periphery, because when I mentioned making an assault mech out of brain-dead, easy-to-understand and maintain parts, I was talking about this monstrosity. On a side note, shout out to the Hatamoto Chi. The Draconis Combine made the Charger into a samurai, because of course they did.
Of course they did.
Samurais are cool. Depending on where you're at in the timeline, strategically these things border on being too expensive to properly utilize. Tactically, they have one purpose only. But that purpose, to be blunt, is to beat the snot out of everyone in front of them until the screaming stops, be that the screaming of the people you're stepping on, or the screaming of the voices in your head demanding you to kill until you can kill no longer. And that is a purpose that, if resources and strategic concerns aren't relevant, can take you a long way. There is a reason why, if anyone can afford it, they'll jump at the chance to have at least one. And that reason is the same reason Teddy Roosevelt had an entire fleet of battleships sail around the world on a diplomatic mission. Everyone has to take you seriously when you have enough firepower to level a continent. My three favorites are pretty common favorites, truth be told, but sometimes a thing is popular for a reason. First is the Atlas. Of course. If the Urban Mech is the scrappy underdog mascot of Battletech, the Atlas is the true and proper mascot to sell you on the massive mech warfare game. This thing was commissioned by Alexander Kerensky, the man who would go on to win the Star League Civil War and accidentally create the clans, specifically to be the biggest, ugliest, scariest thing on the battlefield, and that was achieved 110%. It's slow, it sure is ugly. They spent an entire year developing the skull head alone, and when you roll up in one, you're basically invincible. It ended up becoming so loved that even as the Succession Wars raged, Atlas mechs could still be found in active production across the successor states. They only got pricier, and some specific configurations and whatnot were eventually lost, but the Atlas itself has remained a permanent fixture of warfare ever since its introduction, for when someone absolutely needs an AC-20 to the face. And if you think about it, there really is nothing better than an Atlas for a stealth mission. If you kill everyone in the area you're sent to scout out, there's both no enemy left to report you, and no one left alive to worry about reporting back on. The Highlander, meanwhile, is a 90-ton mech with jump jets. It's standard operating procedure for some people in the setting to use those jump jets to jump on top of you in what is called a Highlander burial. This was discovered in early trial runs of the machine, when it was found that if you landed on top of a light mech with one of these things, it would just get implanted into the ground like a Looney Tunes skit. The legs were specifically reinforced to accommodate this strategy, because sometimes even the military-industrial complex accepts "it's just so cool, you guys" as a valid reason to develop a weapon.
Yeah.
With the headpiece, it also kind of looks like Shockwave, in case you needed more reasons to fear this thing. Created during the years of the Star League, the Highlander would go on to in some ways become an even more appreciated mech than the Atlas itself, at least by the SLDF. Obviously well armored, its weapons were varied enough that it could still comfortably fill any role needed of it. With a Gauss rifle, an LRM-20, an SRM-6, and 2 medium lasers, it was deadly at most ranges, and its pilot tended to be trained well to be given the privilege of fighting in such a creation. Most famously, of course, was it being the premier mech of the Royal Black Watch,
Yes.
House Cameron's own personal bodyguard.
The goddamn Black Watch!
Deployed in these mechs, among some others, 9 members of the Royal Black Watch proceeded to nearly stop the coup that broke apart the Star League in its tracks, and even after being blasted with nukes, there were still bits and pieces of Highlander to be found, because this thing was a monster. It's only fitting, of course, when you form an organization of people with the motto essentially translating to "fuck around and find out," you need something just as kick-ass for them to use. And finally, the Battlemaster. On paper, I feel like I shouldn't like this thing. I love my AC-20s, and while the previous 2 mechs had or could have them, this thing doesn't. Weighing in at 85 tons, it's even on the lighter end of the assault mech spectrum. But it's just another comfortable mech to me, like the Centurion. Going back to MechWarrior 5, it was the first assault mech I ever got in the game, so it has a special place in my heart for being my first introduction to this setting's truly all-out pieces of hardware. It has 6 medium lasers, 2 machine guns, a PPC, and an SRM-6 by default. On paper, that ain't the most shooty of mechs. It's more beamy, and I don't always like beamy. But I think the reason is that it's almost a sort of proof of concept. Proof that physics can be wrong, and if you multiply something by 0 enough times, you get a number bigger than 0. Aside from the PPC, none of the weapons on this thing are particularly scary on their own. But here's the thing, it's an assault mech. It can lumber up to whatever is bothering it, barrel stuff it with 2 machine guns, 6 lasers, and a missile shotgun, and then never stop firing until the enemy is dead. Yeah, it'll get hit, yeah, it'll need some repairs after a fight, but the mental image of someone in a blackjack laughing as they pelt it with their signature rocks only to realize it just keeps getting closer and closer brings me joy. Lighter mechs or other assault mechs are probably better more often than not, but getting to pretend you're the lead titan of the rumbling is its own kind of victory. At the end of the day, an assault mech may not be the best solution. In fact, it may not even be an optimal solution. But if money and morality aren't an issue, there are few, if any, circumstances where an assault mech isn't an acceptable solution.
True. Oddballs, here we go.
There are a few other ways to classify mechs in this setting, and even one further weight class, super heavy. These are mechs above 100 tons of weight, with some even going as high as 200 tons. As much as I said mechs can be too big to fail earlier, however, this is the point where that loops back around again into being inherently awful. Battletech, in spite of being fairly grounded as far as sci-fi goes, still operates on the rule of cool to some level. There's a reason mechs are practical here. But at this level, we come back around to where this gross misuse of resources just can't be justified. Every weakness an assault mech has, this thing has in exponentially worse ways. If you can build a lance of light mechs for the price of 1 assault mech, you can probably build a lance of assault mechs for one of these things, and that latter trade-off is not nearly worth it as the former one arguably is. Even when the clan invasion was all said and done and technology started improving, that only took these things from absolutely not worth it to maybe kind of worth it in a given situation if you really want one. If it's that important for you to have the biggest of big sticks, then I guess go get one, enterprising mech warrior, but if something is deemed too big for House Steiner, then perhaps you should listen to them. Omnimechs also bear a mention, them being clanner tech though they are. TLDR, Omnimechs are clan mechs designed in a way to have some of their systems be completely modular. If you get your arm blown off and need a new one as well as the weapon to go with it, just slot in a perfectly compatible part and away you go.
There you
can
go.
Repair and even completely change your combat role mid.
Hey, Thunderclap, thanks, bud. Thanks for being a member for 10 months, bud. I really do appreciate it.
Battle if you can retreat back to a base and change loadouts, giving them massive amounts of versatility. They weren't perfect. They were millions of C-bills more expensive than a roughly equivalent normal battle mech, and while they're
What the fuck is that?
Weapons could be changed, the core of the mech couldn't really be swapped out, so if you made an inherently shit mech, no amount of magic modules could fix that. But for what it's worth, Omnimechs were pretty game-changing when they appeared in the Inner Sphere, and are certainly one of the few good things to come out of a clanner's mind. There are also a variety of different ways to classify them by role rather than by tonnage, but those are generally so simple that even a professional YouTube yap man like myself can't really justify or even figure out how to talk about them for minutes on end. A mech with the role of Scout is a Scout. Truly, you needed me to tell you that. And you don't need me to tell you any of this, but then I'll be forced to get a real job, the worst of fates. Frankenmechs are at least fun to mention on the side, though. A Frankenmech is what happens when you're either insane or well and truly out of options.
Right.
You've got the body of a centurion, the weapons of an atlas, the arms of a hunchback, and the legs of a locust. Well, better get welding there, buddy. This isn't even a real classification.
That's orcs.
Not really. It's just what you call a mech that was clearly put together by a person who either desperately needs to get back on their meds, or a person who desperately needs more than $5 in their bank account to buy something that doesn't have an aura of tetanus. Zombie mechs, meanwhile, aren't destroyed mechs brought back to functionality, but mechs that are so absurdly, unrealistically, unfairly hard to kill that you need either overwhelming force to completely destroy, or a 1 in a million shot to take out the pilot and render it non-functional. And I'd largely bring it up because no, this is not another term for assault mechs. An atlas can be reasonably destroyed, if only by another atlas. A zombie mech would be something like a medium mech that for one reason or another is so ridiculously hard to destroy you need to break out an atlas to deal with it once and for all. It's very much like a zombie in that regard. You either destroy the head, aka kill the pilot, or render it into so many pieces that it can't hurt you anymore, even though it almost certainly still wants to. And those, in the simplest of terms, are the different kinds of battle mech you need to worry about in the universe of Battletech. Maybe you got yourself a light mech and will become the galaxy's greatest pain in the ass. Maybe you got yourself an assault mech and are destined to die in glory as you charge a fortified position of 10 other assault mechs.
Yay!
Or maybe you'll just scrap one for parts and sell it to the highest bidder. Either way, a mech is a mech, and the world is your oyster once you own one.
Yep.
Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the assault mech to my Battletech, standing taller than everyone else and probably worrying anyone standing below you anytime a mild breeze kicks in. If you'd like to...
Alright, here we go. Okay, here we go. Is he not going to say anything at the end?
Starter, I hardly know her.
Really, bruh? Really, bruh? Warpugs. The classes of mechs. Explained by PancreasNoWork. Yeah, why not? Hold on. Hold on, we'll check that out. We'll check that out right now. Clans, ill clan dies. Here we go. Hold on, I got you. There we go.
Watch their fire! Found everyone! Deal with them! Roger! Stu! Prego! You're too close!
Yeah, that sucked.
Sneak, and we make another run. I'll go right, and this time, I'll go first. Watch those mechs on the hull. Going in high! Lead on, Nick. I'm right behind you.
Cutscene. Oh!
Stay close. If either of us is hit, we break off, right? Norseman is clear. Repeat, Norseman is clear.
Good for you!
Dropships detaching from the main carrier. Watch their fire.
I see it! All hands, brace for evasive maneuvers!
Get to your escape pods.
You did not do good evasive maneuvers there. You did not do good evasive maneuvers there.
Watch those damn dropships.
Big boy.
fighter sacrificed her life to land a direct hit to the bridge of Clan Wolf's flagship, the Direwolf. Among the listed fatalities was our Ilkon, Leo Showers, who was stationed aboard the vessel. The Council has thus ordered for all Blood-Name warriors to be recalled to Stranamekti, to appoint a new Ilkon to lead our invasion. As for all other warriors, you are to stand fast.
Stand
and
fast.
will be tasked with securing all that we have laid claim to within the occupation zone.
Well, sometimes you just have a bad day. Warpugs, PancreasNoWork delivered us a rather good explanation of the actual classes. Clan law, they had to return to clan space to vote. I know, it slowed the invasion for a full year. A full year, it gave the inner sphere the chance that it needed to breathe. Guys, this was kind of a short Battletech Tuesday, but I needed to get back on track, and we're back here. Warpugs. Sven is finishing up with his third war. His third war series, and we are going to be checking that out soon. As soon as he gets done with the compilation, because he's going to be adding a whole bunch of stuff to it. But guys, I hope you enjoyed tonight. If you did, make sure you like the stream before I get out of here. And, guys, oh God, I got to keep on doing this because I like it too much. I really do like it too much. It's going, Fox. It's going. It's going. Oh my God, Hakan. Oh my God. Oh my God. It is going to be a day. Warpugs, I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you for joining me for Battletech Tuesday, and I hope you have a great week. I'll see some of you for shenanigans on Friday. Warpugs, thank you for joining me. I'll catch you guys later.